everyone. How are y'all? Welcome to Thought Crime and Keto and Crime. Today's a very special Double Friday episode. Normally I only upload 3 times a week, Wednesdays, Fridays, and Sundays, but today, with all of the Iowa caucus hullabaloo, I decided to jump in and do some research on that myself. There's no crimes have been committed so far that we know about, but I still think it's something that fits in with the theme of this channel. So I hope you enjoy it. We're about to dive in to the Iowa caucus and Shadow Inc., the company that created the app that caused all the problems. And we're going to do a deep dive into them. We're going to talk about it and hopefully give you some clarity on exactly what happened there. Now, I know I'm still wearing the headphones. My new camera and ring light and everything got here yesterday. I am going to break that out and have it ready to record Sunday's true crime video on Lorena Bobbitt, so it'll look for that. And let's get into this. I think it's going to be interesting. First of all, what is a caucus? I know we hear a lot about that. Some states caucus, some states have primaries. Well, basically it simply goes back, does the state itself operate the choosing of a candidate, or does the party control that? Well, with a caucus, the party controls it, and it's a lot cheaper for states. So some states have elected to do a caucus rather than a primary. Now, a primary is controlled by the state. Every person has a vote, secret ballot vote, just like in a general election, and depending on who got the most votes within that party, the states promise that the certain amount of their delegates are going to cast their votes at the national convention for that party to choose the candidate. For example, in a state that has a primary, like my home state of Tennessee, you have they're closed primaries. There's closed and open primaries. If it's an open primary, everybody may vote for whoever they want to, one person, as long as they are a registered voter. In my state, so Republicans can vote for Democrats, Democrats for Republicans, Independents and Libertarians, whatever you. In my state, it's a closed primary. In my state, I am a registered Libertarian, but for the primary, I usually re-register as either Republican or a Democrat, so I can kind of help scope who's going to be the candidate. Because let's face it, we're a two-party system. I wish we weren't, but so this last time I was a registered Democrat so that I could vote in that primary. However, I immediately changed back to my Libertarian registration for the general election, where I voted for Gary Johnson. But I kind of wanted to have some control over who he was running against, if that makes sense. Now, so if you're a Republican, you have to vote in the Republican primary. If you're a Democrat, you have to vote in the Democratic primary, so on and so forth. And based on who comes in ahead on those votes, that's who that state's delegates are pledged to. Each party, the head Republican, the Republican that gets the most votes in Tennessee will have the Republican delegates from Tennessee pledged to cast their vote for them at the Republican National Convention in the summer. Same with the Democrats. Whichever Democrat gets the most votes will have Tennessee's delegates pledged to vote for them at the National Convention in the summer. So that's a primary. It's just like a general election. Cut and dry, but it's ran by the states, and the states have to fund it, so it can get a little expensive. So some states opt for caucuses, which are ran by the parties. Iowa has a caucus. So the Republicans in Iowa run theirs as secret ballot. You can do it one of two ways. You can do secret ballot, just like a primary. Everybody gets together at polling centers. They cast their vote for their delegate. They turn those in. The party counts them, phones in the results to the state party. The local party phones in the results to the state party, and that's who that state's delegates are pledged to vote for at the convention. Democrats in Iowa do it a little bit differently. They do an open forum kind, which is kind of like town halls all across Iowa, where people get together and basically poll and campaign for their candidates. So based on the number of people, and these could be anywhere from 20 people in a room in a schoolhouse to 200 people in a convention center taking part in this caucus, everybody there is divided up by who they're supporting. So you have all the candidates with a group of people pledged for them. basically they have a certain amount of time to talk to other people in the room and kind of convince them to come on over to my side. And then after that time has elapsed, any candidates that don't receive 15% of the total people in the room are eliminated. And then it goes on to the second round, where those people can either leave and not vote, or they can convince the people that supported eliminated candidates to come on over to their candidate to build up. And that's what Iowa does. So it's kind of complicated. And usually this is kept record by handwritten notes, handwritten counts, and then at the end of the night, the head of that local party phones it into the state party. It's tallied, and that's who that state's delegates are pledged to vote for at the national convention. Well, this year, the Iowa Democratic Party, as well as the Nevada Democratic Party, though the Nevada Democratic Party has said they will not be moving forward with this after this debacle, contracted with a company called Shadow Inc. to do their voting with an app rather than good old-fashioned pen and paper calling it in. And what they do, they keep track of how things are moving among the groups by having each person in that group download that app and put in their vote. So it's kind of like half caucus, half vote. And that's how they keep track of the vote. So as a candidate doesn't get 15%, is eliminated, their name is sort of removed from the app, and then the remaining people vote for the people that are there. So it's a little bit simpler than just counting people in a group, but still. Now, who is Shadow Inc.? And then at the end of the night, that app is supposed to be universally transmitted to the Democratic head of the state party in Iowa City to be counted and released, and then they will vote for that person at the convention. Now, Shadow Inc. is a fairly new tech company that was started in 2019. Its CEO is Gerard Nimeria, and he is a longtime worker on Hillary Clinton's campaign, as well as some other large Democratic progressive campaigns in history. They were created in part by a huge donation. Some say they are owned by this other company, by this nonprofit. Some say they just, pledged or, invested in them. There's a little bit of muddle there. But basically they were created by a grant from Acronym. Acronym is a nonprofit and PAC, Political Action Committee. Their political action committee is known as PAN-Acronym. And it was created in 2017 after the 2016 election. Tara McGowan was a volunteer for Obama for America in 2011. She also worked for Hillary Clinton during 2016. And then she created this nonprofit and PAC to help get progressive candidates elected across the country. Now, progressive candidates are people that are on the left, liberals. They believe in, some socialisms. I don't really want to say that. They believe in progressive ideas. It's not always about socialism, but the great majority of them do believe in things like universal health care, capped education tuition, though I would stop at calling some people socialists. I think Andrew Yang has a lot of great ideas, but he's in no way a socialist. He's more of a libertarian. I think he's better suited to run on the libertarian ticket than the Democratic ticket. That's my opinion, although he does have the freedom dividend, which some people say, but it's also a very capitalistic idea when you break it down. So I don't want to just throw socialism in there. Forgive me for saying that. But they usually have ideas that are out of the ordinary for the status quo. Let's put it that way. And her nonprofit, Acronym, wants to help get these candidates elected across the country at the local, state, and federal level. So in 2018, they actually helped over 65 progressive candidates get elected, including, AOC and people like that. And they did it in several ways. They did it through digital campaigns, which they have another kind of branch of their nonprofit that helps create email campaigns, text campaigns, that sort of thing for candidates. And they also fund media outlets like the Courier, the Copper Courier, that are more progressive propaganda machines than actual news. They kind of do it to counter things like Breitbart and The Blaze and things like that that are more right-wing propaganda outlets than media, that they, both sides, whether you're on the left or on the right, believe that media is tainted, that you can't really get an unbiased look unless you go to a foreign news source like the CBC or the BBC, that sort of thing. So they fund progressive media outlets to kind of counter what they think is right-wing propaganda. And amongst some of their companies they helped start was Shadow, which is a basic tech company that produces apps for progressive and Democratic candidates to do different types of marketing. The apps count caucus votes, just like we talked about. It also does things like allow people to mass text, registered Democrats, registered independents, what have you. It also allows mass email campaigns, just digital marketing at its finest, all in an app, which makes a lot of sense and is actually a very good thing. I have no problem, because I'm sure there are conservative outlets and conservative tech companies that do the same thing for the other side, so I have no problem with that at all. I have no problem with business getting involved in politics as long as it's just creating tools and things like that. We'll talk about finance reform, campaign finance another time. But Gerard Nimaria was on the board of Acronym, and once they invested and helped start this company, although some people say they own it, some people say they just invested in it, like I said, that's a little muddled, but he became the CEO, and they contracted with a couple of the major runners in the Democratic side, such as Pete Buttigieg and Joe Biden, to do email campaigns and text campaigns, and contracted with some of the major Democratic parties to help run their caucuses. Like I said, this wouldn't be needed for a primary at all. So let's get further into it. Among Shadow services, besides email campaigns and text campaigns, which is what Joe Biden and Mayor Pete said that they donated, Mayor Pete by far gave the most money to Shadow Inc. to help run the digital arm of his campaign, over $42,000. And some say that's weird because his life partner has been connected with the company and a lot of other things. So his donation or the services he bought from the company far outweigh any of the other candidates. None of the other candidates invested in this app or paid this app for any sort of services. Biden paid $1,200 for what he said was a text campaign, whereas Mayor Pete over $42,000, but there's nothing necessarily wrong with that. I've got to dig further into that to see if there's any improprietary stuff going on, but that's where we stand. But among those services is something they call the light rail, and the light rail is after information is gathered via text, email, or input, which is how it was supposed to be in the Iowa caucus. It's then transmitted to that state party's information warehouse so that it can be tabulated and the results released. Well, according to everything that I've read, what happened in Iowa was very simple. The information went in as it should. There were a few people that said they had a problem downloading the app, but once they got it, it functioned just fine as far as they could see. They put in their information, but then when they went to transmit it to the state Democratic Party, that was the problem. It would not transmit. It got held up. It just circled. So that was the big delay. Now, could this have been prevented? Yes. And I'm going to talk about that in just a second. But then it could have prevented in one of two ways. On the app side, I work for a tech company. I work on the customer relations side, but I do work for a tech company, so I do understand how things function and how things are supposed to happen. It seems what happened is that the app and the server probably got overloaded with the amount of information coming in, so it ended up just circling, kind of like when you see a video buffering, that kind of thing where it just buffers, similar to what happened here. I'm sure the server just got overloaded and could not transmit. Well, that could have been prevented in one of two ways. They could have written another program that would have mass tested it, that is, sent millions of bits of information to the server all at one time to see how it handled it. And if it was going to slow it down or going to cause a problem, they could have had a backup server, which they probably should have. Also, on top of that, they could have basically had people in their company with Acronym, with these campaigns, with the Democratic Party themselves, go ahead and download the app and attempt to access it all at one time from, computers, from smartphones, from tablets, to see if that overloaded the server. So these tests should have been run. I understand they're saying that the CEO is saying it was a mistake in the code, but a mistake in the code is one thing. I believe the server just got overloaded here. So that could have prevented this from happening if they had tested it, which apparently they kind of rushed this out to get it ready and did not. Also, the good old-fashioned phoning in of the results. They didn't think they were going to need that, so they didn't have enough people manning those phones, and those phone lines got jammed. So they didn't have enough of a backup plan. That's not necessarily a mistake on Shadow's part. That's a mistake on the Democratic Party of Iowa. So yes, all of this could have been prevented. I understand tech mistakes. I understand. I've been part of some of them myself and had to help straighten it out. It's just a shame that this was such a big one. Now, as to Mayor Pete knowing that he was ahead before the results were ever released, and then the fact that he donated over $42,000 or bought over $42,000 of services from this app is a little wonky. I haven't quite made up my mind on that, but he said he had some good polling in place. But still, projecting yourself as the winner while the information is jammed up it's not kosher, put it that way. The DNC is calling for a recount in Iowa. I think that's a good thing. I think they should do just a good old-fashioned paper recount and see where it lands there, just for fairness, because we've already got too much controversy going on in elections in this country. We need to prove that our system still works, and I think it does. I think it does. I know there's some shenanigans, but I think overall we have a good system. Anyway, that's what I found out about Shadow and the Iowa caucus. I hope you enjoyed this special Double Friday upload. I'll be back soon on Sunday with another true crime video. Like, comment, share, subscribe. You can also help support the channel down below. Keto Comic.